Which is kind of synonymous with Java and voiceover, if I'm being honest, so that's why it's not.
Hey, what's going on all? Thanks for joining in another virtual production stream. Anyone who's new joining these, we're going to be running these every single week, and we just hang out and talk what's new in the world of virtual production. And we talk about using the Offworld Live Compositing Toolkit and other virtual production tools, and just talk new techniques in this world. It's always changing and shifting, and as a result, we just use the incredible resource that is our Discord here at Offworld Live, and we just have amazing feedback from our users and beta testers and people just having awesome ideas in this world of virtual production, and just in general media in and out in Unreal Engine as well. So it extends further than just creating movies or creating broadcasts. We've also got so much interesting developments going on in terms of media in and out, and just combining that with games and interesting uses of media. So it can be so you can think of this stuff in terms of making movies and making cinematic shots, or you can also think about this stuff in terms of how can you bring media in and out of a game or a simulation or something like this, and how what can you do with media in and out? It's an incredible place to experiment and play. So that's why it's always good to open up this conversation and just keep this feedback kind of rolling constantly. But yeah, this time I just wanted to chat about 5.3 because it's just come out really recently, hasn't it? And kind of just do a little bit, like, I've just been downloading it and testing out, you know, what's changed in terms of media I/O, in terms of composure and things like this. So I sort of thought I'd just download it and just chat about it. Maybe even so some people that have really complex projects and are worried about upgrading and things like this, because it can always be a bit of a worry. Maybe so you don't have to. You could see whether it's worth you making the move over just yet for your composure work or for your compositing or media I/O or virtual production kind of work. So some things that they've been like putting to the forefront in terms of their release notes, if you check like the, you know, Unreal 5.3, what's new. It's really interesting to read through. I just kind of jumped straight down to, you know, there's loads of cool stuff in terms of rendering and world building and content creation, but just jumping down to the virtual production stuff, this SMPTE streaming is what they're really putting to the forefront at the moment, because it's clearly for massive virtual production studios. This is doing some quite cool stuff. So SMPTE is like RTMP or other kind of live streaming, you call it a protocol or like a format for sending live stream data. This is talking about sending the video of your inner frustum. So if you're, you know, filming from a certain camera and you've got your camera's viewpoint, you know, the inner frustum is what the camera actually sees, while the outer frustum is kind of general light information of the whole scene. Your inner frustum can now be sent to other machines in a kind of less resource heavy way, it looks like. You know, it's avoiding re-rendering on the computer side. So this SMPTE seems to be quite a cool way to free up some resources when you're doing end display stuff, you know, for massive studios and things. It's not something I'm ever going to be looking at anytime soon, I don't think, but I don't know if anyone's got any thoughts on that. It's quite interesting.
Some of the artists I've been I I don't think you can give somebody another stuff. So
So
I written down.
yeah, we've also just got like virtual camera updates and things like this, which is really cool. And hold it 1 second. Hey, we're back. So just sorting out some audio stuff. So yeah, they're talking about like Cine Camera rig rails and things like this. Could be fun to play around with. I don't know what the update to this is. Yeah, tailored towards advanced cinematic and virtual camera workflows. Maybe there's like, I don't know how that differs to your regular camera rail, but yeah, could be fun to check out. Looks like you can store rail points. So this is for really detailed virtual production type workflows. So you can drive the rail, quite useful, sounds cool. This is a really interesting one. They've come out with their own Cine Capture component. So this is kind of similar to the Owl Capture, but it actually is a total, under the hood, it's a total different method to the way they've done that. We do ours via capturing the viewport exactly as is. What they do to do a Cine Capture 2D is they take a regular scene capture 2D and then add on post-process effects afterwards. So it's actually a really different pipeline under the hood, and I haven't chatted to the main devs at Offworld about exactly what the differences are here, but there's it's just quite interesting that they also have this scene capture component, which I've been doing some tests about, you know, which is more performant and which kind of which has different uses in different places, and it's totally just dependent on what your kind of workflows are. Different scenes will lend themselves to whether you want to use the Cine Camera component or R Capture or just a regular Scene Capture 2D. And then also going into whether you're using composure stuff, you can also use the CG elements that come with composure or our Owl CG element. So it's just more things that you can look at using, you know. This is just like with our capture component, you can have a Cine Camera and you can click add and add a scene capture component to the Cine Camera that then just gives it a render target basically, and then you can pump that render target into composure and things like that if you want to. Just quite interesting. Let us know if you got any thoughts on that. We're cool to chat about that. Anamorphic lens calibration, interesting, because they were talking about you can have anamorphic squeeze that gives you the right aspect ratio for an anamorphic lens, but they were saying a lot of the kind of nice kind of interesting, what would you call it, kind of distortion around the edges of your lens. This is what you would see in classic old anamorphic cameras. Cinematic. If you're shooting with like an awesome old school cinematic anamorphic camera, you'd see some kind of distortion. So I guess they are saying that there's a tool for solving anamorphic lens distortion. So is this generating it? I'm not sure. I know they have lens distortion models now, so I don't know if it's a case of something that you can tweak by eye, or it's something where you can input the exact camera and lens that you're using and do some kind of a Ruko tag.
Yeah, basically what happens is you use a checkerboard, right?
Mm.
And what you're doing is when you have a real lens I'm talking about, You are mapping the distortion intrinsic to every lens because the lenses are basically, multiple pieces of glass,
Mm.
guiding the light in and out basically till it hits the plane of the sensor. And there's intrinsic distortion and all that. So that when you shoot something that is supposed to be a straight line, it actually isn't, not perfectly straight. And
Mm.
so when you map the distortion, you can then use that to match all the VFX, et cetera, exactly to that. But with anamorphic lenses, they weren't previously able to solve that calibration properly. So now they can.
Ah, very cool, very cool. So is this like as it's a calibration solver, is this something, is it like a widget that you run? Is it a HUD widget and it's like,
So I'm guessing, I haven't actually looked at this specifically, but generally speaking, what happens is you have a lens file.
mm,
And in that lens file, you have several tabs. One is for the lens distortion, and that's where you use the checkerboard. Then there's a tab for like nodal offset. And so, for instance, when I have my bliss, it sits on top of the camera, but when you track it, that's what's actually being tracked, the bliss itself. So you need to figure out what is its offset in like all 6 axes of DOF, degrees of freedom, from the nodal point of the lens, right? Not from the sensor, but from the nodal point of the lens. And so using an April tag and kind of the position of it from different angles, you can get the exact position of that nodal offset. Likewise, you can also use that's where you use the Aruco tag. So you put a real Aruco tag on your stage, you put a virtual Aruco tag within your setup, within your scene where you want it to be. And then when your real camera looks at the real tag, you can basically make the virtual camera snap to the exact position orientation
Hold on, guys.
to the
I'm
virtual
hearing
tag.
audio.
Does that make sense?
yeah, for sure.
So that's all done within the lens file is the gist,
Mm, yeah, yeah,
which is then attached to the camera, of course.
yeah. Then you got that exact matchup between the virtual and the real camera. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
And like I say, it just wasn't possible before to do it with an anamorphic. So they've finally been able to figure that out, I guess.
Mm. How do you know how widely used anamorphic lenses are in
Yeah,
sort
I
of
know a
cinema
lot
and
of people
production in
use
general?
anamorphic.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people use anamorphic here.
Mm.
Oh, I can finally hear you guys. Yay.
Hey, nice to see you drop in. It's been a little while.
Yeah, it's been a long, long while.
Yeah,
What's going on?
nice. Yeah, you joined us looking at the 5.3 release notes. Just seeing what it means for virtual production, really.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, we've not. We generally hang out here and try and figure out some new kind of compositing method, or just something someone's looking at learning in generally more virtual production led workflows.
Okay.
Yeah. But Strix is saying you've got a comp workflow you want to ask about.
Yeah, I'm experiencing an issue with compositing where it has some unintended blurring, despite the fact that I've turned motion blur off.
Okay. Yeah.
And I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah.
It only seems to work when I possess cinematic cameras.
Okay. Only when possessed. Yeah.
Yeah. When I unpossess the camera, everything looks just fine, which is really strange.
Yeah.
Is it your aperture setting?
Let me take a look.
Because if you have your aperture at like 2.8, you're going to have a narrow depth of field, and if you have your focus distance set to whatever, then that's potentially what it is.
I'm changing the aperture settings around. It's still causing that blurry thing.
In your focal plane?
focal plane is
So like the focus distance, you can actually turn on. There's like a little switch. Sorry, I'm not at that computer right now, but there's a little switch you can checkbox you can click, I think, and it shows you like a purple plane of where
Ah.
your focus, focus plane is.
Debug.
um,
It's like focus debug
Yep.
plane, isn't it?
Yeah, something
I
like
can
that.
see it. Yep, I can see it. Yeah, it's locked on right onto the character. I think because I'm
Well,
tracking it, but
it was
yeah,
a
it's
thought.
still blurry. It's
Post
alright.
process.
There is no post process in my scene.
Got it.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was my guess.
Ah! That's alright.
Are you able to share your screen?
Of course.
Nice.
Share my screen and screen 1. Here we go. Oh no, this would be much to look at. But here, you can see on her gauntlets and her shoulder pads when she's moving around, it's like a really distinctive, like smearing effect, which is really annoying. So let me
Yeah.
stop and I'll play it again, and there it is. And my motion blur is turned off. Everything is yeah. It's only when I unpossess it, so I'm gonna hit F8, and then it's gone. I'm like, whoa.
Does that carry through to? I guess, are you outputting a render target from that Cine Cam?
I'm actually not using any render target. It's just this is pretty much a blank scene.
Sure, okay.
Yeah, there's no target whatsoever.
I've totally had similar things with I think it might be like a complex skeletal mesh thing. So because this is a complex skeletal mesh, this kind of smearing can come up.
Oh.
It's not something I've like found a fix for yet, but down to keep troubleshooting.
Oh boy.
Yeah, it's been really frustrating for me as well recently. I found it. So I guess ways to test this. So are you planning on running this? What's your use case here? Are you planning on running this through Composure?
Yeah, I'm gonna be running a virtual production project where we'll be running characters like this over a green screen.
Yeah.
And yeah, this is one of the issues I'm trying to solve. I am putting together like a shopping list of things I'll be getting, like Ultramat and possibly timecode and genlog generators and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, nice.
Probably be within a month, and I'll probably need to learn about how to connect all those things together.
So you're essentially doing like AR elements on. Are you changing the background at all? You're having the person composited into the scene as well as characters?
Yeah, we are indeed changing the background to be whatever virtual environments. But yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So yeah, as for like the smearing with this, it's a really strange one. I do get the same thing with skeletal meshes. I think it's kind of on our list to look at. I guess one way to test it could be to like keyframe some animation in a static mesh and see if you still get kind of blurring and smearing, and then I guess that tells you that it's most certainly a skeletal mesh thing, you know. That's kind of
I guess I can,
something I can test anyway.
I guess I can try that. How hard can that be? Oh, whoops.
I'll kind of look at recreating it as well on my end as well.
Okay. Damn, so if I just myself and I do nothing. But yeah, that's pretty much the
Yeah,
the
it's
crux of the issues
a
I'm just
really
trying to
annoying
find.
issue that we I don't even know when it sort of started, this one, because I don't think it's specifically a 5.2 thing, but I've been noticing it in the past couple of months.
I don't. I don't think I've ever encountered this issue in the previous versions, like in the Unreal Engine 4 era.
Yeah, yeah. And it's you tried like Lumen on and off and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's usually the go-to, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So if I go into here, motion blur. There, it's off. If I go to Lumen.
So
Go to yeah, that's still there. Damn. But strangely enough, if I try to possess, I think if I add a regular camera actor,
it's an interesting find about the fact that it's only when you're piloting it, and I hadn't noticed that before.
If I go basis, if I go into a regular camera actor, okay. Zoom in. Oops. Yes. Oh.
So
Oh, there we go.
sorry about that.
That's all right. Okay, so it's still even for that camera.
So yeah, what I would usually find is that it would just be in the scene anyway, like pre adding an Cine Capture or anything.
Mm-hmm.
Are you finding this, or I guess you're saying it's only when you're piloting the camera, right?
Yeah, when I'm piloting a camera, if I unpossess it, then yeah, there's nothing there.
Is it worth testing? It's worth testing if you do run it out to a render target, but you're not piloting it. Do you get the same thing? Perhaps that's worth looking at.
I guess I can try that. Output to a render target compositing output. Let's go. Ah, crap. Yeah, it's still there.
Still carrying through to the render target. Yeah.
It still carries over.
Yeah. Yeah, this has been one on our tickets for a while. Yeah, but it's good to know that other people are getting this as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you're not crazy after all.
Yeah, literally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry. Don't have a direct fix for it, I'm afraid.
That's
but-
okay. That's okay.
But we will. It's definitely really key to be looked at.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
That's okay. All right. Well, thank you for helping out and all that.
Yeah. No problems. Yeah.
It's about 12:30 in the morning for me, so I'm gonna get some sleep.
Oh,
sorry for interrupting everybody. I'll be going now. Bye-bye.
No, thanks for chipping in. It's really good to hear
Okay.
from you, and I'll let you
Likewise.
know how we go with it.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks. I'll see you later.
Cheers, bye.
Bye.
So yeah, the little mesh thing is really strange.
Well, that was totally different from what I thought he meant when he said blurring. Obviously. I was picturing, Cine Camera type things. So.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's just a strange skeletal mesh thing. Something I found in Unreal 5.3 is the player viewport compositing output just crashes if you play that. You can still output to a render target, but yeah, for me, I've just been straight away getting a crash running at any 5.3. Yeah. Quite an interesting one. I've also found that totally undocumented, just like it's not even in this roadmap. They've got like a few other quite rudimentary looking comp elements. So they've got this radial comp element, and it's kind of like just quite a simple material. I don't know what they're using this for. What, like, someone has requested this, and I'm not sure what compositing use this kind of has. It's quite interesting.
Transition?
Yeah, maybe. That's a good point.
Because I was thinking about how you have the level switching, right? And how could you put a transition into that?
Yeah, yeah. Very true, very true. Yes, it's gotta be. Yeah, so I thought with level switching it'd be good to do like cut to some kind of test card or pre-recorded sequence or something, like NFL or something. You'd have, the kind of the logo coming up for a second while everything boots up and changes, kind of loading screen test card type thing.
Sure. But having transitions, like editing style transitions, would be pretty nice too.
Yeah, definitely.
And this could literally what they just had there could be that sort of thing. I think it feels like it is.
I think that's a really good point. Yeah, they have this ramp one as well, so it's like,
Yeah, that would be kind of cool with like the background kind of fading from one to the other. I don't know how viable that is.
Yeah.
You don't almost have to have both simultaneously because when you do transitions, you actually have both elements, at the same time, and you're just switching from one to the other, so they overlap, in other words.
Yeah.
So you'd have to have, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, it's just a thought.
Yeah,
I'll have to think about it further.
It's interesting. It's these elements have just appeared. Roto paint as well. It's kind of interesting. So how do you do this one? Press paint up here, and yeah, guess you could do a bit of a garbage matte with it'd have to be on a non-tracked piece of footage, but it's an interesting one. Again, not sure on the use case, as it's just pretty undocumented, but interesting to see there's some work going on in terms of composure.
Now, what I really want to see is them having some kind of like, well, obviously better keying, but like an image map keying, like where you have a clean plate type of thing where you take an image or a 3D kind of setup of your cyc, So it knows what's already there, even like imperfections, etc., to be able to remove. That's how they do it in a few different pieces of software. I know Aximetry is doing that now, and Stipe, not Skype. Sorry, it's still early here too. But it can work very effectively.
Yeah. So is that just to get a really so how does that differ from just kind of grabbing the green and
Well,
doing your kind of
green is solely going by the the chroma, right? The color of it, and the clean plate is essentially looking at what is already there in 3D space. So no matter which kind of angle you're coming from, so if you had like some kind of imperfection, wrinkles or something like that aren't moving or whatnot, it would know to remove those pixels.
Okay, so it's a kind of AI system, is it?
No. It's just looking at what's already there instead of looking at like just whatever color is in the scene. It knows what pixels are already there, what color, what, even if it's different color.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's just an enhanced way to do the keying based in 3D space. Like with the Ultimate, you can take, like, if you're not moving your camera, you can actually take a snapshot, so to speak, of the background, and then it knows exactly how your background is, again, even if there are imperfections in the lighting or the color, etc. And so you can get a much better key that way.
Yeah. Interesting. So it's just seeing the difference
But if
between
you
the
have
reference.
But if you have a tracked camera, of course, everything changes as every time you move the camera. But if you have a 3D image essentially of your site, you can remove that.
Very cool, very cool. How was your talk with the Nerfs people?
So a little odd. I guess when I spoke to the guy who's the actual developer, I had told him that, I know various people working in developing things for virtual production, and a lot are interested in nerfs. And he's like, oh, good, maybe you can, test some of the stuff we're developing or give feedback, etc. But the guy I ended up speaking with was more like their sales guy.
Yeah.
So he was like, which version do you want to buy? And I'm like, it's not quite what I discussed. But bottom line is that there is a freemium version. And he said, basically, maybe you can just test this and then we'll go from there. So, I guess I'll see what happens. It's on my list, but I've got that event on Wednesday next week for the, that I want to set up my virtual production thing for. So
yeah.
I'm kind of focusing on getting all the various things ready for that. Speaking of which, I noticed like one of the very next things in the 5.3 release notes was an actual DMX interface. And then below that is the Lumen thing, or not Lumen, sorry, pixel mapping. And if you remember what I was talking about with my 4K TV as kind of a wild wall, where I could put it in the actual, on the site to the side of the characters and give them environmental lighting.
Yeah.
The thing that doesn't have, since, TVs are RGB, you don't have high quality lighting. But if I could put white or white lights onto that, like maybe on the edge of the TV or something like that, I could supplement it and get essentially RGB WW, which is what the, other types of things do. Like the pixel map lighting that they have from a couple of different companies now, that sort of thing, that they use in LED volumes. Anyway, point being that with this, I could, I think, do both, but massively less expensive and higher detail if I want reflections and that sort of thing.
Interesting. Yeah. I think it's really cool. Adding DMX lighting control, it's like definitely has really interesting crossover doesn't it? With just
When I
controlling
looked
your
at it
lighting in your scene.
before in a previous version, it just was daunting, and I was like, maybe later. But now that they have something that is more of like a real interface, I
Yeah,
think it'll be a lot easier to work with.
yeah, very true. Yeah, it's actually got some sliders now. Yeah. Yeah, interesting.
There is something that you really need to look at. I'm gonna direct message you a link to it. But essentially, there is I don't know if you've seen this Beeble.
No, not familiar. No.
Okay, so what they're doing is essentially relighting.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
so what happens is but it's for photos. You upload a photo,
Mm.
and then it will, basically you can relight it.
Yeah,
And they
I have
generate,
seen these. Yeah, really interesting.
yeah, that one, yeah.
Mm.
But so Switchlight is what they call that.
Mm.
But they're coming out with a beta of a desktop version, and essentially the way that, well, you met Johan, right?
Yeah.
The other week, Johan,
Yeah.
he had done this with like a series of, whatever number of images, a few seconds or something like that
Mm.
from a film, and then put it into Unreal Engine and then relit it in Unreal Engine based on the position of lighting in that.
Mm.
So what happens is that it creates like oh, let me remember, like an albedo map, a normal map, a
Yeah.
roughness map, and reflectivity, and then you can bring that in as a material, and then on your subject in Unreal, and then it will react to the relighting.
Yeah. Really nice. Very nice. Would it be? It would still be on a plane, I guess. A plane with a normal map. So it's got some bump information.
Yeah,
But because it's a
yeah. I
piece of
mean, you're
video
still just
footage,
taking
it'd be a plane. Yeah.
images. Yeah, you're taking 2D images,
Yeah.
sequence of video.
But you can still totally like get some backlighting, I guess, and some light on the face, right?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, well, it's AI based, right?
Mm.
So essentially, it's able to think of, well, that's the thing. I honestly, I don't know how
Mm.
well backlit it would work.
Mm.
I think, yeah, I just don't know. The point is, they're coming out with a beta desktop, and there's a sign up for it, and they only have a few more slots left. But it seems like something you'd like to try.
Yeah, definitely, definitely, really, really cool. I saw it worked into uh someone made a YouTube video on it recently. Yeah, worked into a kind of virtual production setting, and it was a little kind of smooth, but it's it's early stages, so it's a really interesting one. Definitely, could definitely see amazing potential there for sure.
Yeah, well, it's worth definitely checking out. Maybe getting on, like I said, their beta list. I just sent you a link to it.
Thanks. Yeah.
To sign up, just follow their the way others have done it there.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah, super cool.
Yeah, if we can add that into virtual production, I think it'll be huge because, like I said, with what I'm trying to do with the HDR-WW, which is what I'm calling the 4K TV, if I can trigger the HDR mode, but for lighting on the characters. But if I can actually just completely light all my characters flat and then do all of it in post. I mean, for, if I'm doing a post workflow, obviously.
It's really clever. So they've switched out a new background there. So they've keyed it and then
Yeah, they're
generated
also
these
doing
normals.
keying. I don't know how great the keying is, but
it's interesting. I mean, yeah, like this shot here, it's like it's very AI looking, isn't it, at the moment? It's got that kind of AI smoothness, which is immediately kind of like, looks a little funny, but the the potential is crazy. Really cool. Yeah, imagine not having to do any like replicating of your lights, you know, in reality. It'd be so much less cost on making a studio.
Yeah.
You know, amazing.
So, and the other thing I told you about my deep fake idea.
I'm not sure.
So the concept that I've had for a while, but making it happen is going to be a little bit of a challenge. But is to first scan an actor and create a metahuman or whatever, some kind of character with iClone maybe, or something a little better than metahuman, save the full body. Anyway, then when I'm shooting somebody, so I've got my primary camera, which is arbitrary in focal length, etc. But then I have reference cameras on the side that are getting motion capture data. That motion capture data drives the character in Unreal, and then I basically have the cameras still, matched to the virtual camera, etc. And then I basically would deep fake map the actor on my main camera back onto the metahuman that is of themselves, right?
Yeah.
But using the lighting data from within Unreal Engine. So that way it would react with volumetric fluids, and it would be able to deal with hard shadows, reflections, etc. But then metahumans, of course, don't look real. By deep faking the person back onto themselves, in theory, I'm thinking I could make it look more realistic.
Yeah. It's got to be some combination of deep faking and metahumans to, because I always thought that like getting a flat image is one thing, but getting something that's actual geometry is just so much more malleable within the Unreal
I mean,
world.
that's the ideal goal, but honestly, to do full volumetric video capture is not inexpensive.
I bet.
Because they'll typically have those, like $200,000 setups with multiple high-res cameras, and not to mention the processing behind it.
But yeah, to do like a kind of normal map generation, with because so people were talking about doing a similar thing where they get a kind of template mesh, and then they would rework, so that template mesh would have all your blend shapes and things like that, and then they would rework a scan of someone's face over that, but just put the normal maps and roughness maps and any number of maps they want to put over it, and apparently it's still quite a manual process. Like there's a lot of reworking to make it look right, but essentially that's they've got like a pretty nice workflow there where it's like a pretty standard template image that's got all the blend shapes, and then the thing that makes it really look like that person is just normal maps, and
it seems like AI would work well for that if you had like a feedback loop, right? So it tries it, it looks at the real picture, and it compares it, and then it modifies it, and it keeps going until it gets it right.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm sure we'll see like more integration of these kind of tools in Unreal, down the line.
Well, I think sometimes they take a while to get to Unreal, but yeah. Like I think this integration of Switchlight into Unreal is going to be more like us manually kind of doing it.
Yeah, for sure. And then Unreal releases some version of it down the line. Yeah.
Or a plugin, something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are a lot of definite possibilities. Did you see what Netflix is doing with the what is it called? So they're doing green screen, but they use magenta lighting.
No. Interesting.
So basically, they turn off the green in the lighting. So you have, instead of RGB, you have just RB.
Mm.
And with that, they're able to get like a really good key. Yeah, that. And then they're taking, uh, they're basically lighting them normally using AI and then mapping the color back onto themselves.
Wow.
But here's the kicker. I saw this at that one event the other week, and the guy that actually developed this was there talking about it. And they're not really looking at using this for production.
Mm.
Um, Before he showed this clip, he was showing some of the samples that people used for training AI for chroma key,
Mm.
right? So instead of having like really nice mats like this, like you just saw here as it was sliding back and forth with her
Yeah.
hair,
Yeah.
they had like automated mats that were really crappy.
Mm.
And that's what they're using to train AI, which makes no sense. You're training
Yeah.
AI to be
On a
bad.
bad. Yeah, yeah.
So with this, they're going to be able to generate like really good mats that then could be used to train AI for eventually having really good AI-based keying.
Okay. So they're not using it for production, but they're using it for training. Yeah, training AI to make good keys. I see.
Yeah. I mean, there may be case scenarios where they use parts of this for, some production, but, I guess it would all depend.
So, like, the
Still,
idea of,
kind of a cool.
I guess, is the idea that this, if everything's these pinky tones, then it's so far from the green that you'll get a cleaner key. Is that the idea?
Well, it's not simply pink. It's instead of RGB, it's just RB. There's no green in the light.
Okay, I see. Hmm.
So then you get completely perfect separation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Amazing.
So anyway, just
Very
kind of,
cool. Yeah,
speaking of this sort of thing.
yeah, yeah. Interesting
And
stuff.
then it's a little more complicated than that in the way that they deal with it. But he kind of went through the whole thing. But it was, yeah, pretty cool.
Mm, yeah, yeah. Thanks for the little news flash on virtual production techniques. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think yeah, I'll just be, still interested in looking at this technique for going from like a zoom in to a tracked camera as well. That's be a really cool one to look at.
Well, I mean, Johan talked to you a bit about that, right? And how they do the projection planes, or not planes, but uh, what is it even called? Like what they're doing with axisymmetry.
Well, using billboards. You mean?
Yeah, but it's a little bit different. But I'm trying to think of what it's called. But yeah, something like that. But they use a I don't know. That was the reason I wanted you to talk to Johan. He gets it a little better because
Mm,
he's kind of worked with that.
yeah.
And I've only kind of listened to him, and I get what he says, but I can't quite repeat it.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Yeah. I don't know if it was Strix that talked to Johan recently, so I'm not sure about that one.
Oh,
But
sorry. I thought
I'll
you did.
I'll link through with him about it. It's interesting. So what, they had a
Uh,
method for zooming out with a kind of projection plane, did they? Yeah,
yeah,
interesting. Mm.
but I don't know what the exact limitations and implementation of it is.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, maybe he did talk to him. I thought he talked to you for some
Mm.
reason.
I thought this was interesting as well. There's I think it's kind of just new like previews for iOS type stuff. So I guess it's kind of linked with what we were talking about with doing portrait outputs. It might be like a nice way to
I
make
hope they
these
have
good
that for
portrait videos.
Android.
Hmm.
I don't use any Mac devices.
Yeah, I guess I don't really. really package them either, but it's interesting. It's like you could do some kind of real-time AR kind of app and package this in, you know. Interesting.
It's ironic that they do this with iOS when Unreal Engine really mostly works with only PCs.
yeah. Really doesn't recommend using Apple. Yeah, when you look at the GPU comparison between Apple. And,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just unmatched. Absolutely unmatched. Yeah, I guess that's outputting to iOS at the end, but I guess they're still not recommending that you use iOS to build it up, I guess.
Right. I'm just saying it's ironic that they develop it
definitely.
that way.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff. I think sort of the resounding thing here is that there's some, in terms of composure and stuff anyway, it's like it's interesting that there's been some developments and someone's developing something there, but I feel like it's definitely not at the forefront of what they're doing, and there's feels like there's hopefully a lead to trying to not need composure at all. I think that would be what everyone would be after. If it can just I think there's totally some like if you want to get really technical with sending out certain layers, certain EXRs and things like that, then composure seems useful for certain pipelines of that. But if we're talking just kind of smooth sailing indie, keeping your workflow simple kind of virtual production, then, you know, hopefully composure will be not even needed soon enough, you know.
Yeah, time will tell.
Yeah, we'll see.
I mean, if I could send out well, like I told you about that thing with the garbage mat, right? If you remember, if we could just simply send out where it's not rendering the entire scene, which makes no sense at all, and it's just sending out black and white to the Ultimat. I mean, that's, you know, it's not all in Unreal, obviously, but just being able to do that and then send out just the background video, that's all you really need.
Yeah.
Right. So in theory, I mean, well, you'd still maybe want like a foreground element or maybe some other things, but you could do something fairly simple like that in theory.
Yeah, again, I really think custom depth, you know, stencil buffers should be a really good way to do that, and then you could use the media, like Blackmagic media direct outputs, you know, like direct output to SDI. Yeah, in theory that, and then yeah, like all you need is one render of the CG, but I guess it's pasting that same render of the CG over, but you just do one render and then like have it doubled up, but then the mat is telling you what your foreground elements are. Yeah, but I really think stencil buffers are good for that, but you don't get you still get anti-aliased edges and stuff. Yeah. Hey,
I'm wondering why depth cameras have not replaced green screen completely yet, because it seems like so much more practical. Is it because of its lower resolution or something?
Depth cameras.
I mean, having like a depth map tied to your footage.
I'm not familiar with this as a method.
Are you talking like an Oak D type of thing?
A what? Sorry.
Oak D, like an OpenCV camera?
No. I mean, just like having a camera sensitive to depth, like we have on our iPhones, and you use that information to isolate your character instead of keying. Like people have been doing it with, like, I know those cameras are usually lower res. Like the Kinect, for instance, is using one, I believe. Like you have like the color camera and the depth camera. Other similar sensors have that as well.
Yeah, there's some people that have, we talked about that actually just recently. I was picturing because I used to shoot a lot of stereoscopic 3D about 10 years ago. And I was thinking if I put kind of reference cameras on either side of the main camera, because I use more like cinematic cameras, right? Then I could use those side cameras for depth information on the character or on the scene, and do basically what you're saying, and then apply that to keying. And there's somebody else I was talking to who kind of talked about potentially using nerfs or nerf-like technology to isolate, people from the background. Another technique is what I was just saying, if you heard before, about getting a clean plate of the background, which essentially is doing sort of the same thing, but in the opposite direction.
Right.
So
But yeah, but like the biggest like that magenta light thing is amazing, but it's so much more post processing, and I'm trying to figure out why we are not using those. That like the depth map essentially gives you a matte that you can use, so that way you don't have to mess around with lighting and you get like a good result. Well, obviously there's a reason why it has not become the standard yet, but like a couple years ago, I was foreseeing this as killing the green screen basically. So, but yeah, like
I agree.
basically with more cameras. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I totally agree with you. And this is why we kind of talked about this the other week, but nobody has really developed a system for it. At least not for, like cinematic type of cameras.
Yeah. The challenge is that you're combining different cameras, so you need to compensate for the fact that the sensor is not at the same location, obviously, but because it's
Exactly.
like so expensive to key and clean all those shots.
I agree.
There is
But
one
like I said,
reason you
I don't know
won't
if you
have
heard again, but
too
with
much.
Oximetry, they actually do a really good job at it, and they're using, like I said, the clean plate sort of thing, taking away the background. A friend of mine ran footage I had through Oximetry, and it came out really nice. I was like, wow, I need to kind of look into this further. It's not inexpensive, but they have sort of an open, like a less expensive version. I was even thinking to use it potentially to replace my Ultimat just on a second computer, have it in and out with SDI, and then replace my Ultimat. So, but yeah, like I said, I don't think anybody's really developed it for cinematic cameras, but that was why I was kind of picturing something that would be added on and would give you kind of like higher depth information. And like you say, it's different cameras at different positions. You can figure out that nodal offset easy enough. We kind of do it with the camera tracker, that we use anyway. But it does seem like something that would be ripe for AI, right? To be able to compare the three images, right? Your two reference cameras, or possibly even four cameras, like two on the side and two, one above and one below, right? And use AI to really get like a hyper accurate level of depth information.
Yeah, and to calculate that, you just need to give them a single image, so it should not be too hard.
Well, you would give them five. I mean, 3 or 5 or whatever. You would
Yeah,
give
I mean
them the
one
main image and then the
frame.
reference images.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Because one of the
Definitely.
thing I keep seeing on lower budget shoots is that you're trying to set up a green screen, but you're not lighting things properly, so you spend even more money trying to clean that up afterwards. So it's like time consuming to properly set it up, and then time consuming to clean up the shots. And so this is what inspires me the most about virtual productions for simpler projects like music videos, where you're not looking for like perfection either. It's like it allows us to be more creative because we spend less time on fixing things and more time on like the concept and the actual content.
I'm with you.
Really
So
interesting one.
I'm wondering why do like for virtual production studios, like they use all those screens, but then you turn part of it green, so it's the part that the camera sees, so you can chroma key it. So, like, isn't it just possible to shoot whatever is on the display, or is it's not good enough?
Some screens generate flickering, don't they?
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Filming a screen is always bad, actually. So I see.
I know there's a lot.
Well, I mean, the flicker is not really an issue because they've kind of gotten around that. Of course, you
Really?
just have to calibrate things so that you don't get the flicker.
Yeah. Well, there's like a price point as well, isn't there? There's
Well, LED volumes are super expensive. Yeah.
Yeah, as it is. Yeah. But I feel
I
like the
mean,
idea is that you can film the screen as the background. You know, like I'm not totally sure like where I've seen this inner frustum actually just being a green screen actually being used. I'm
oh
not
yeah,
sure.
they do that frequently.
Yeah, nice. What's the kind of use case for that?
You know, like typically on an ICVFX stage, right? They're shooting a certain scene, but there might be something where they need to composite something into it. There's actually, you know, like in other words, even though it's in camera VFX, they might want to add more to it, right? But to get that, they need to be able to key it or rotoscope it, but keying potentially is easier, or the roto is easier. So anyway, the point is there's actually something called ghost frame, and what it will do is you shoot at, let's say you're shooting at 24 frames per second, right? And on the wall, you'll get interspersed. It'll be half the time it'll be green, half the time it'll be the environment, right? But that's at 48 frames a second. So as your camera shoots, well, I take that back. It's the other way around. Your camera is shooting at 48 frames per second, but you're only going to use 24. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So every other frame is green, and every other frame is the environment, and that way
And you have
you
both
can
versions.
separate that in post.
This is awesome.
They had this for the big Fox News setup, didn't they? They had
I don't know.
going on. Yeah, I think we're talking about the same thing here. Yeah, it's like so that the two cameras could see what they were shooting at the same time or something. But it's amazing way.
Well, that's another use for it. Actually, yes, you could have two separate cameras on a volume, and instead of having green on the second set of frame, you just have a different environment.
Yeah.
So one camera's on one frequency, one's on the other.
About that ghost frame thing, how do you sync the camera? Because like they maybe they both run at 48, but if they're not in sync, it's gonna be weird, right?
Well, if you had two cameras, the point of shooting 48 is that you have the same camera taking the intermittent frame, or the both sets of frames, and then you separate them in post.
Yes, but
if you're shooting
like
two
two
cameras,
processes are not in sync perfectly, you might get like in between those transitions.
oh, agreed.
Right?
No, you have to have them absolutely synchronized.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean,
Like,
that's just
wow.
part of the software setup is
Okay.
the synchronization. Obviously, you're using Genlock.
Okay, I never heard of Genlock.
Oh, yeah. No, Genlock is a signal that is sent to cameras and related equipment that make sure that they're all perfectly in sync.
Makes sense.
You can have it.
Yeah,
you can have it generated by like the room, can't you? You can have one pulse for your whole studio because of that.
You typically want that. That's kind of the point of it. You want them all on the same signal. Thing is, it's like 70-year-old technology. It's literally a square wave, you know, or just some version of a square wave, and it's not. It's fine for what it does, but the thing is, there is much more accurate timing technologies nowadays, and they really need to start integrating this into virtual production. Because you can have something set up. It's precision time protocol, PTP, and you can actually get like a card, like a PCIe card, that would synchronize with GPS and give you hyper accurate timing, like sub-millisecond, that I could literally synchronize my setup with your setup somewhere else in the world down to like I say, sub-millimeter accuracy.
Very cool.
But Anyway, that's a whole discussion in and of itself.
Yeah, interesting.
But yeah, the depth map keying is definitely something that I would love to see as well. It's just, like I say, somebody would need to really be able to, develop that, both the hardware and the software version of it. Like there are depth, like AI based depth maps,
Yeah,
but I don't know how hyper realistic or accurate they are.
Mm. But again, it's going to be something that will end up flickering or something, and you will need to rework that shot. And so,
essentially just
like,
doing a key yourself, yeah, down the line.
yeah. Well, like maybe it would work like most of the time, but still it's not like a complete technique. And hence why it makes sense to do as much as the effects and practical as you can, because you can control how good it looks before you see the images, basically. But from what I've seen from dev cameras, also Chipko mentioned that one of their drawback would be reflective surfaces, which is interesting. But from what I've seen, they are much lower resolution than what you get with your color images. So when you match them, you get an issue on that aspect. You get your garbage matte. I mean, your matte is not going to be as clean.
In terms of the reflections, that's why I think people have talked about using NERF technology. You know about NERFs?
Yeah.
So NERFs work well with reflections, right?
Yeah.
And you get sort of 3D information, but not exactly, and that's the trick. But if they can figure out ways to kind of combine the two, you might be able to get around that, kind of limitation of it, the reflections part of it. As far as the depth camera, what do you call it, resolution, that's the thing. I mean, you're talking about specific depth cameras, but what I was kind of talking about was having depth cameras that you would put spaced around your, main lens, and those could be of arbitrary resolution. And if you look at something like, what is it called? Xvisio, right? They have a, like a OpenCV type of camera that is 4K. So with a set of those, you would really be able to get, adequate resolution. And again, if you use those along with the main footage and use AI to train that, I think you'd be able to get it to work. But again, that's a fair amount of development to make that happen.
Has anyone used any of these NERF scanning techniques?
I played with it one time, and that was a while back. But Valinga is the company that I was talking to, so
cool.
I am. I'm gonna download. Actually, I downloaded it the other day. I haven't installed it yet, but I'm gonna try it next week after my Wednesday event.
One thing I haven't tried NERF yet, but one thing I wanted to try was to give it rendered images. Like obviously you don't need that, because if it's rendered, you have the whole environment already. But for aesthetic purposes, to explore the potential from that.
Yeah. And as well.
What's 3 Studio then? Is this another?
I don't know that one.
To train some NERFs.
Yeah, it's just like a. I think
just Jen saying on the chat she's used this. But yeah,
so it's not really an Unreal thing.
Did you say there was a potential sneak peek we could get on Valinga then?
They have a freemium version.
Cool.
I've tried Valinga, and my issue is I don't really know much about it with the file format. So it has its own like envol format, but just super interested to know like how to get nerves into Unreal and like do real-time rendering. Because Luma AI I've tried is really heavy on the computer still.
I met with the developer of Valinga a few weeks ago at an event here in Los Angeles and spoke to him in some detail. And he, we talked a little bit about what they're planning to develop. And I told him I have like a network of people who work in virtual production and try different new things, etc. And he said that, as they develop things, we could potentially test them out and give feedback, et cetera, et cetera. But then he had me speak with, like, in the end, I ended up speaking with their sales guy. So it wasn't quite what I expected. But when I explained to him what I, had talked to the developer about, he said, oh, okay, well, let's get you started with it. And then you can speak to him further about beta testing, new features, or even alpha testing, I should say. So just FYI, if that's of interest to you, I can keep you updated.
Yes, please. I think that would be really cool. I think another problem is a lot of these companies run on credits, and I think with the nerf to Unreal plugin for Valinga, it's required that we have some credits or something. So I think I couldn't try at some point because of that.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but really cool. Also looking at different kind of like open source tools for real-time nerf rendering. So thinking about how that could be done Valinga side, so it'd be really cool if we can do maybe like a few sessions in the next few weeks looking at what could be possible.
Awesome.
Sounds great.
Well,
Sorry,
by next week I won't have already done it because I have an event next Wednesday, but the week after that, I will have already gone through, hopefully anyway, Valinga and looked at it more closely. But there's also, just NVIDIA's solution for nerfs, but I just haven't spent much time on it yet.
Interesting.
Because it's not quite ready. Like, you can't really use it properly for what I'm doing for virtual production in Unreal Engine because it's not volumetric. I mean, it is, but it isn't. It's kind of like polar coordinate system versus Cartesian coordinate system. You know what I mean?
I do know.
Did
what
you?
I think there's webs.
Oh, polar coordinate system, like Cartesian is your standard XYZ, right? And a polar coordinate system is where you have like a vectors and distances.
Okay, yeah. So instead of like, is it like difference between being like world units or relative units?
Not exactly, because that's still Cartesian. This is just the point is it's set up differently. It doesn't give you actual points. It just gives you rays based on positions. I don't know.
It's more of a volume than mesh, I guess, as well, isn't it?
Yeah, there's definitely no mesh. Now, one of the things I suggested to Orlando, the developer for this, for Valinga, was an idea I had because AI is really good at image recognition, right? So if you like take a picture of a tree, it can tell you exactly what kind of tree it is. So my thought was, because part of what they're doing is working out ways you can take things out of a nerf, right? So if you don't want a tree there, you can take it out. But what if, and that's just an example, but what if you could recognize that it's a tree, take it out and replace it with a mesh tree? And then likewise, if there's a table, recognize that it's a table and then put in a table, that matches the specs based on the visuals that you have.
Yeah. Be amazing, wouldn't it? Yeah. Pulling from like Megascans or whatever and modifying.
Or I was actually, for trees at the very least, I was suggesting, speed tree, because then you could like create a mesh that's movable, et cetera, that exactly matches that thing. But yeah, otherwise you could potentially use Megascans for different, parts of it, or, just have some kind of procedural thing that, you tweak to match it. And if you had kind of like back and forth AI, meaning feedback-based AI, so that it looks at a thing, it sees if what it created matches that, If it doesn't, it tries again, and it keeps going until it does. Which is kind of how they teach, or I should say, like robots teach themselves how to do different movements. It tries everything until it gets something that works.
Yeah, sure. And then even then, like mid-journey wise, you can do, oh yeah, I quite like this one, generate more like this, you know. So you can even have that input from the user still as well.
Exactly.
Very cool indeed. Well, yeah, I'm gonna check out some more Nerf stuff for sure, and gonna keep looking at what 5.3 means for composure and stuff, and basically looking at doing a few more tutorials on composure, but then looking at some other stuff. After
Cool.
that, really, that's where I'm at with things. Really good luck at the conference next week. That'd be really cool. Let us know if you need anything for that. But I'm kind of thinking like it's maybe we were talking about, you know, setting up a scene and stuff. Might be getting a bit tight for that, but I'm down to offer any tips or anything.
Well, I'm around if you're mostly anyway. If you have time at some point, let me know. I am going to use just the the placement plane for kind of a fly-in effect, that sort of deal. But again, I don't really have a way to switch between one and the other, so I'm just gonna, at least not like actively in terms of like going straight from one smoothly to the other.
Yeah, that's definitely quite tricky, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm gonna try to figure something out.
Yeah, yeah. I will look into that as well for sure, and yeah, let you know if I find anything.
All right,
Yeah.
cool beans.
Very cool. Yeah, cool to have you all hanging out as always. Gonna wrap this one up, but
Yep.
yeah, be doing it every week. If anyone wants to chat about anything, definitely jump in next week. Yeah, as always, really cool to see you hanging out. Cool. Cheers all. Catch you later.
Catch you later.
Thanks.